Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Films and Stuff podcast. This is Ethan, joined, as always, by most valuable Pete. Hey, Pete, what's up today?
Not much, buddy. How are you?
Saturday morning. Saturday mornings mean one thing only. Not sugary cereals, not cartoon lineups. It means stream or skip segment. Buckle up. You and I have a very high octane, shall we say, show today.
Let's say we've got some pretty low lows and some pretty high highs.
Let's say opinionated shows today. Yeah.
Highly.
Let's say what we were each assigned. You were assigned Ironheart. Neither one of us was super keen to watch the show. But as Marvel fans, and since this is pretty high profile, we knew it was important to watch and to review.
Yeah.
Fair statement.
And you had a look, I don't want to call it niche because it's America's most popular sport, but in the global sense, it's relatively niche. You had America's team.
About the Dallas Cowboys. If you know American football, NFL, National Football League, you know the Cowboys. Even if you are one of our international listeners, you know?
Yeah, I would go so far as to say that the Dallas Cowboys are to American football, like, for example, Manchester United is to soccer.
Yes.
Or
that's right.
The Yankees are to baseball. Or
you're right.
that Serena Williams is to tennis. You don't need to be a fan of the sport to understand that that's what you're talking about.
That's right. I think the way that you explained it and kind of made it akin to Man U, right?
Yeah.
That an American would not really know, well, I don't really know who the player is, or the coach, or the rules, or the following, or where they are in the standings, good or bad, or championship. But yeah, I kind of recognize that's a very prominent British football team.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to give the review of Ironheart first?
Yeah, because mine's going to be short and maybe not so sweet.
Oh,
okay. Spoiler alert. I saw Ironheart. Now, Ironheart is about the MCU character Riri Williams. We would have all last seen her in Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever.
That's right.
Where she plays the spiritual successor to Iron Man. Now, in the comics, she's kind of like Tony Stark's protege.
Yeah.
In the MCU, she's portrayed as kind of like, well, I did this on my own. I'm Riri Williams. I'm a genius based on, in this case, I think she's from Chicago. She's kind of she's built her own legacy in the MCU. The problem is the legacy is awful. And the double problem is she manages to shit on Tony Stark and the MCU before that.
Yeah, I think from the movie, things moved very, very fast. One of the reasons I think Iron Man was so well received was because it started slow and you saw the origin, and it was kind of that slow burn where you saw over time how Iron Man came to be. And I think that's one of the problems with Ironheart is that it was really accelerated and it didn't give us enough time to understand the context, the background, to soak it all in. It was just kind of like not spoon-fed to us. It was just like we were that goose trying to get the liver fattened up, and we were just like shoved down our throats. We're like, whoa, hold on. Yeah, hold on.
Here's the thing. When we talk about Iron Man, in the first movie, and in fact in all of the movies, as a personality, Tony Stark is kind of a jerk. He's kind of an asshole, right? He's like a super arrogant, overly educated, super smart boy wonder genius.
Who is a little bit of a womanizer and arrogant.
Exactly,
and the coolest...
right? But you see him get knocked to the absolute bottom, and he has to build himself up. He has to escape his tormentors and his captors. And then you
Mhm.
see him grow as a person, and he's just like, well, I don't want to be involved in this anymore. I want to be a better person. I want to be a force for good. And that happens in almost every movie. In
Mhm.
his three movies, that happens in almost all of them.
Yeah.
And he's a likable character because of that. Riri Williams isn't. In any way, shape, or form did I find her to be a likable character. In fact, I find her to just be arrogant.
Yeah.
Her opening line in the series is, and I'm paraphrasing here, Tony Stark succeeded because he had money. And that's the only thing that differentiates Tony Stark. And I was just like, no, well, Tony Stark had all the money in the world, but sitting in a cave in Afghanistan, he was still able to do everything. He
Yeah.
still physically built an arc reactor, saved himself, got out of there, changed everything. It had nothing to do with money.
Yeah.
And in this, the arc is okay, she's an MIT student. She doesn't have any money. She's there on scholarship grants, so forth. I can't believe they didn't connect her in any way, shape, or form to Wakanda, especially after everything
Right.
she did in the Black Panther
Yeah.
movie. You would have
Yeah.
thought they would have paid for everything. You would have thought they
Yeah.
would have done
She should
something.
be on scholarship. Yeah, I agree.
Apparently, they didn't do anything. She gets kicked out because to
Mhm.
raise money, she's selling answers to tests for other students and giving up
Yeah.
like that. You know what I mean? So she's already
Yeah.
flirting with like being a bad guy like that. I use that term very loosely.
Yeah.
She steals the Ironheart suit, goes back to Chicago, and to raise money to complete the Ironheart and to finish the AI, what does she do? She joins a crime gang. You
Yeah.
don't get to compare yourself to Tony Stark. Like, that's not a fair comparison. And then on top of that, you don't get to shit on him and say that I'm better than him.
I haven't seen this, but I've read this and now I'm hearing it from you. And I mean, I don't want to bring like all these politics and social dynamic issues into this because it's entertainment and it should be above that. But frankly, when you've got different genders and different races, you cannot kind of make people the same character arc. You need to, I think, customize the characters a little bit more and their arcs and make them a little bit more likable, right?
Yeah,
And it sounds like they didn't make a very likable character, whether or not that is authentic or not authentic, or they wanted to make it gritty or not. I agree with you that I think one of the problems Marvel has struggled with is that their character is not really very likable or admirable,
yeah.
right? And that's a writing problem, that's a positioning problem.
And you've raised a good point. Like, a lot of people had issues because she's a young black girl, or because, they're changing some dynamics and gender and race. This has got nothing to do with any of that,
No,
right?
likability doesn't have anything to do with those things.
Nothing. There are people of all races, of all genders who are likable and unlikable, and Riri Williams comes off wholly as unlikable.
Which is too bad because I think as an actress, she's actually very likable. I feel like
Absolutely.
I think they've given her a very unlikable character.
I've seen her interviews. She comes off as
Yeah.
charismatic. She comes off as great.
Yeah.
But the actor has nothing to do with the specific role in this case. And the
That's
role
right.
was just not good. Like,
Yeah.
it
The
was
character is
written
bad.
poorly, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And of course, there are certain, as you expect in modern days, a lot of social issues and social dynamics and gender issues and gender dynamics and, a lot of political issues and political dynamics come into play. But at the end of the day, this is a superhero show, and I'm a superhero fan. In fact, I'm one of the biggest
Yeah.
superhero fans, right? You are one of the biggest superhero fans. If we
Yeah.
can't like a superhero show, that's a problem for Marvel.
I think that's probably one of the things that Disney has not done well. And maybe they're starting to recognize it and move away from it, which is they don't need to integrate all these other issues into their characters. Like if they would just give us a likable superhero character, we're trying to, I think, escape the day-to-day news cycle and whatever, your individual political systems or beliefs are. This should not be tied to that. It should be independent of that. And I feel like the more that they would distance themselves from that, the more that their characters would be embraced by everybody and not kind of positioned to appeal only to some, whoever those some
Agreed.
would be.
I
Yeah.
100% agree. I think this is a problem that Disney has to kind of solve, because the number one goal for every MCU property, Star Wars property, Disney property, Warner Brothers property, DC property should be, how do I make this show or movie fun to watch and liked? That should be the first product. If you can make it, okay, we're going to talk about social issues and make people think about it, I have no problem with that. You have to make the first aspect come true. You have to make it likable. Like, I have to walk out of the theater saying, I enjoyed it. And this was not enjoyable in any way, shape, or form. Like, I just thought it was awful. The CGI wasn't great. I thought production values were as you would expect for a modern MCU show. But again, I think they've toned down the CGI.
So I think of Ironheart as female Iron Man. Where does that fit within the MCU? Because we just saw Thunderbolts, asterisk, the new Avengers.
Good question.
Where's Ironheart fitting into all this?
No idea. Ironheart is probably the last show, in my opinion, of what Disney was trying to do with the quote unquote new or young Avengers. Remember, they had a
Yeah.
bunch of shows come out with
Yeah.
a lot of younger people like
Yeah.
Hawkeye and
Yep. Ms. Marvel and
Ms.
the team.
Marvel and so
Yep.
forth, where I thought they were gearing up to have like a team up movie or a team up show with all the quote unquote new kids on the block.
Right. And instead, all they did was they took the hodgepodge of basically Marvel Suicide Squad, the Thunderbolts, and made them the new Avengers, right?
Exactly.
That must have been a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
We're back to who is it? Red Sparrow, or David Harbour's character,
Red Guardian, yeah.
right? Yelena Belova, all the hodgepodge, kind of riffraff that Marvel never thought that they'd really like pull out again. And all those fringe characters actually became beloved. And one of the reasons they were beloved was that they were so authentic, right?
And so that movie, for example, most of the characters were likable.
Yeah.
The movie was fun to watch. And
Yeah.
then they focused on a real world issue, which was, mental health and things like that. And that
Yeah.
worked. Again,
Yeah.
it wasn't a success, but like at least they didn't put like struggling mental health issues as the primary goal.
I mean, in fact, you could argue that they took a page from, hear me out now, the Fast and Furious playbook, where it was all about family
Right.
and love. And,
Right.
like they kind of played on that, like, hey, we're the Thunderbolts. Remember your childhood soccer team? And,
Yeah,
I love
exactly.
you and I would, spend more time with you. Like all those, very touchy-feely, Fast and Furious issues, right?
In my opinion, this show was a massive step backwards for the MCU and for Riri Williams as a character, for Ironheart as a
Yikes.
character. Do I see this
Yikes.
character being welcomed back? I frankly don't. Will she come back in the next Avengers movie? I don't know. Would I want to see her? Probably not.
Oh,
And
yikes.
again, let me make this crystal clear to our listeners. This has nothing to do with the actor. This has 100% to do with the writing.
That's disappointing because I have to say, like, I'd kind of like to have a new good superhero to follow,
Yeah. Anyway, so that's Ironheart. It is a big fat skip from me.
So we get to it. That's disappointing. How many episodes is this?
Total 6 episodes.
All right. So Ironheart, Disney Plus. Okay. So we've got to skip on Ironheart. We are now switching gears. I was on Netflix and I watched America's Team. We said it at the beginning of the episode. It's about the Dallas Cowboys, American football team, known as America's Team. And that's a moniker that's kind of stuck since I think maybe like the 70s.
Yeah.
And let me just give a little bit of background in terms of, the Dallas Cowboys and how this all came to be. So the Dallas Cowboys, I think, were one of the expansion franchises. There used to be kind of two separate American professional leagues. There was the National Football League, and then there was the American Football League. I want to say early 60s, they merged,
Merged. Yeah.
and the Dallas Cowboys were one of the new franchises, and they had the same head coach. His name was Tom Landry. He was a Texas gentleman, wore a fedora, a suit and tie, from a different era. He coached the team in the 70s. They were very dominant. They had a lot of the highest profile players. They've got the iconic star on their helmet, which is a very clear, symbol. And they were owned by a gentleman who was also in banking. He sold the Dallas Cowboys to a guy named Jerry Jones, who now we all know is a very active, flamboyant kind of owner, and transformed them. And they became kind of, this juggernaut. And now I think they're known as the most valuable professional American football team, similar to the New York Yankees being the most valuable, American baseball team, the Los Angeles Lakers being the most valuable, basketball team. So this is a Netflix documentary, either sponsored by Jerry Jones as the owner of the Cowboys, or implicitly he has some type of editorial rights. But absolutely, you would not say that this is kind of like an objective documentary, which isn't to say that they only show the good. Absolutely, they show a lot of the flaws of the Cowboys and their history. But it basically starts from the time that he bought the Cowboys, how he's transformed them. There was a time in the 2000s where they won 3 out of kind of 4 or 5 Super Bowls, and now they're in a little bit of a lull. It seems like, remember when there was that Michael Jordan documentary, The Last Dance, about
Yeah.
the Bulls?
Yeah.
And that seemed to be like, it was that time when Michael Jordan kind of wanted to say, hey, don't forget about me. And he released it to just kind of be a reminder like, hey, I'm the GOAT. I feel in a way that Jerry Jones is doing the same thing, saying, hey, we haven't won a Super Bowl or even a playoff game in a long time, but don't forget about us. We're still the Dallas Cowboys, the most valuable franchise, the same history and lore. Before I go through kind of my review of the documentary, let's put into context the timing of the release. The new football season is about to begin in a few days. So everyone's kind of gearing up for football. So it's a very, I think, timely thing to watch. And now, just coincidentally, this weekend, the Dallas Cowboys traded maybe their best player and one of the best players in the NFL to my favorite football team, the Green Bay Packers. And it has raised, I think, a lot of speculation and a lot of talking heads and but the conversation had been, Jerry Jones as a very active owner. And Jerry Jones, I think, is an example of the most active owner where he's
Incredibly so.
choosing players, negotiating players, like basically everything has his stamp on it. And I think for the past few years, there has been a general sentiment that he is no longer making the best decisions from a football perspective. And now when their best player had a contract dispute, rather than paying him or even overpaying him or settling with him, they traded the player in what is kind of being described as a very bad trade for the Cowboys. I think it's calling into question even more his football decision making and his ability at 80 some years old, to still be managing his football team in the best way. And it's really interesting now when you go back to this documentary and you kind of look at it in that respect. He's made historically a lot of very, very controversial decisions, and a lot of them have actually turned out in his favor. I mean, he goes through, so the format of the documentary is very linear. It shows from the time that he bought the Cowboys and how he did that to how he fired, Tom Landry, who I mentioned was the only coach in their history up until that time. He hired an unproven coach from the university ranks who was actually his college roommate. He ended up firing that coach. It just kind of shows at every station in the franchise's history since he owned it, at every inflection point, he has not been afraid to make controversial decisions. He's not been afraid to make unpopular decisions. More often than not, in let's say the first 10 years of his ownership of the franchise, all of those decisions have worked out. And he was kind of like that cat with 9 lives. I would say for the past 10 years, it seems that all of his kind of controversial decisions have not worked out for him. From a franchise valuation perspective, the Cowboys are still more valuable than ever. So Jerry Jones, as the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, has done a spectacular job of monetizing the Cowboys, making them an even stronger global brand, domestic brand, maximizing their revenue, probably even, giving the fans an exceptional game day experience with that big scoreboard and the stadium and everything. But the product on the field for probably the past 10 to 15 years has not matched the reputation of the franchise. And certainly they haven't had any championship success for a very, very long time. Turning back to the documentary, it is very, very well produced. There's obviously every episode, Jerry Jones has, a sit down interview, like he's at his desk or somewhere. They've interviewed a lot of former players, but it's a very, very linear documentary that talks about his early years, their first Super Bowl, second Super Bowl, some, drama within the team, more drama, some arrests, some injuries, some retirements, some, records. And then it's kind of skipped and said, and in the last couple of years, we're just, trying to get back to the top of the championship mountain again, but we're still the Cowboys, we're still the best. So it just focuses, I think, more on those early glory years when he was still a newish owner of the franchise. And it glosses over, again, like the last 10 to 15 years. So it's really more of a historical look at his ownership of the Cowboys rather than a current or future look at the Cowboys. My view of this show is I give it a must subscribe, a biased ranking in that one, I'm a football fanatic. Right. So probably any documentary about American football, I'm going to love. I also have to say, I like the Cowboys more than not. And I especially like some of those older teams that I remember from the 90s. But I also give it a must subscribe because it focuses less on the game. So, I mean, if you were like a casual football fan, I think this would still appeal to you because it doesn't talk so much about the game and the strategy and this thing and wins and losses. It's more the overall, hey, we had this big drama. We had this big challenge. This guy was arrested. This guy was injured. I decided to do this. So I think that it's about a football team, but it's not necessarily a football documentary. It's more of a business documentary where you could substitute Google for the Dallas Cowboys. And it's not about their technology or software. It's more about kind of the history, the founders, the products that they've made and how they've, sold those products rather than getting into how they coded and how this thing was launched and so forth. So I think this would appeal to a lot of people if they're even kind of casual football fans. And the Cowboys, probably more than any other team except maybe the New England Patriots, have had enough drama in the past 25 or 30 years or so that it justifies a multi-episode series in a documentary style. They've got enough big names that like Deion Sanders, for example, and some other folks that they've interviewed, that I think it is compelling and it keeps your attention. definitely it would not be something that you could do with a lot of other franchises just because they didn't have enough drama or events or have enough well-known players or coaches or staff that would really kind of keep your attention. So I know you are a Philadelphia Eagles fan.
Yeah, so the Cowboys have a special place in my heart too for that.
Yeah. So I think you don't like the Cowboys as a team, but I think you would even find a lot of the interviews and the footage and some of the stuff a little bit compelling. I don't think it would be maybe a must subscribe for you, but I think you would actually watch the season and be like, well, I don't like that team at all, but that was kind of an interesting story about this or that. So I give it a must subscribe, but I think the timing of it is fantastic. It's not coincidental with the start of the new season 1 week away. It is coincidental with this major trade. And I think it's interesting to compare, all the interviews that Jerry Jones has given in this documentary about, hey, I do my own thing. And now the trade that he's just recently made that has been widely criticized as a bad deal for the Cowboys, and further kind of evidence that Jerry Jones, while maybe a very, very shrewd commercial or business owner, does not have a very good sense of what is best for his football team if their aspirations are to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So that is my review of America's Team.
All right, perfect. Shall we talk about what we have assigned for next week?
Yeah, so we're back to no longer calling our own numbers or self-assigning. We've done it randomly again. Tell us what we've got on tap for next week.
You've got a movie on Netflix that I'm actually really excited to hear about. It's a murder mystery set in an old folks' home called The Thursday Murder Club, starring Pierce Brosnan, Helen Mirren. There's some big names.
No way.
Yeah.
I'm in. Okay.
And I am on Amazon Prime watching Countdown.
All right, Pete, before we sign off on this Saturday morning and watch our cartoons and eat our sugar-filled cereal, can you remind everyone of our YouTube and other social media creds so people can like or disagree or agree or suggest or comment? Do you like America's Team? Hate America's Team? How do you feel about Ironheart, Riri Williams? And maybe even give us a sneak peek of what we should expect for the Thursday Murder Club and Countdown.
Absolutely. Like this video, leave a comment below, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to hit that notification bell.
Could not have said it better myself. Pete, thank you for your time this Saturday morning. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. We will see you or hear from you next week, next episode, Films and Stuff podcast. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ethan. Thanks, everyone.
Bye now.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.